recording.
Yes, I'm
Sorry.
recording. She gave me permission to record. How nice. Oh my God, is this a premium Zoom?
Mhm.
What a privilege.
Can go all night. Hi everyone.
Keep
Hi
going.
Outcast fans. We got a very special guest with us here today. It's Steph. How about you introduce yourself to
Hello.
us?
Hi, Podgy. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Yasmin, for having me. Thanks, Outcast fam, for listening and for tuning in. I'm Steph. I'm currently in Hong Kong, so I'm on opposite poles of the time zones to those of you in the US. And here, the work I do revolves around the topic of mental health. So I founded a charity in Hong Kong here called Body Banter. And what we do is we start conversations with young people here about body image. We try to support them as they explore this topic with a sense of curiosity and courage. So that's the work I do with Body Banter. And I'm also doing my PhD right now, looking at the topic of mental health stigma in Hong Kong. So trying to understand, what it is about our culture that shapes this kind of perception that we have toward people with mental illness in our community. So lots of juicy topics to talk about today.
Cool.
I'm a big fan of Outcasts, and I've been a
Yay.
big fan on Instagram before. So it's an honor to be here.
This is so great.
It's an honor to have
I
you.
feel like I need a lot of mental health guidance.
So we'll start off with family.
Oh my God, family.
That's a good place to start.
Oh my God, like the mom card is
True.
that's a big thing. The mom card. I feel like Asians have a mom card a lot of times. It's like you just can't say no. It's like just
Why? Because I'm your mom. Because I'm your dad. Why?
Yeah.
why? And I'm just confused on like I mean a lot of times I'm confused on why I can't do what I can't do, and it's like okay. So there's no like lesson. I feel like I never
Mhm.
really learned any lessons. Like my life lessons, usually it's like
Obedience. That's a lesson.
yeah, obedience, that's true. Loyalty.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I resonate with the mom card. And I wonder also, since one of our first topics or something we wanted to discuss today was intergenerational issues and how that a lot of things that passed on from the older generation, perhaps there is a lot of misunderstanding with the younger generation as well. And yeah, I'm curious to hear for both of you what that was like. Are there things that um, something that I think about when I think about intergenerational things is sometimes I'll be like, I hate that about what something my aunt did or my mom did or my dad did. And then I see it in myself. And I'm
Oh
like
my
doing the
God.
same thing to someone else
Oh
where I'm
my
like,
God.
飲暖水啦, like drink some warm water. And I'm like,
Warm water, yes. Always.
People
No,
ask me
I
why, and I'm like, I don't know, just do it. It's better for you.
yeah.
what you gotta lose?
Mom
Just
said it's
drink some
better,
warm
so it
water.
must be.
It's true.
Yeah.
Oh my God, my mom
No.
enforces it. Like she would police like in the morning if the first thing I drink is not warm water, she'll get so pissed off. And I sometimes like she would just sneak behind
That's
me.
my dad.
But I'm like, I just want to drink some water, and then I would like pour cold water and then into the glass, and she would just come in like with warm water, like you have to drink warm water first, okay? You cannot shock the inside, okay? And I'm like, okay, mom.
Inside. Yeah. But like what you said about seeing what our parents are and then seeing myself, I don't know, it's so sad, but like it's like something that I struggled so much with growing up, and now I'm doing the same thing, and it's so frustrating.
Yep.
And
I see it myself too, like not communicating in like relationships. Like I
oh yeah,
instead of talking it out, I like become defensive or something. Like, or if I have something that
Yeah.
like a flaw or something that like my partner points out, I get so defensive instead of like talking it out that I would like I realize I'm acting like my mom.
I hear that. How about you, Yasmin?
mhm.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's like my mom is pretty like a very clean person. So perfection almost,
Yeah.
like in cleaning and making the bed. Like when I'm 10 years old, like my bed has to be standardly made, like the hotel where it's like smoothed out. That's the perfection she wants. And so
Yeah.
I think for me, that's the controlling aspect almost, or like the obsessiveness with these kind of little details. And if someone else can't do that, then I feel like they're not listening to me. But then like that's like a really high standard to ask someone to do. And so for me, it's like, oh God, like this is me doing what my mom did to me, to others. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear that. And you know what's so interesting is that sometimes I wonder, obviously, I don't know whether this happens for you both too, but when you look at your grandmothers or your parents, and you watch that interaction, it becomes really clear as to what the trend is within the family. And it really takes that, looking at each generation to be like, oh, actually, my mom did change some things about the ways that my grandmother did things. And she was trying to work hard to improve that too. And it's then also part of our work to do the next part. And like each generation is changing just a little bit, and each generation is trying their best. And yeah, it's so interesting to see it from that lens as well. But yeah, I wanted to hear your thoughts on whether you've noticed that as well in your family.
I mean, even with my sisters, like my sisters are all 10, 12 years apart from me. So like both of them. So when I grew up with my mom, I was like in fear of her, like literally, like she can just stare at me and I'm just like, ugh. But then with my sisters, it was the time when beating your child is like shame upon, like you can't do that anymore. And like she has watched stuff that showed like hitting a child is not good. Like internet was in a thing like back then. I mean, then and not back when we were growing up, you know what I mean? So while we were like, I was like used to being disciplined, I'm like looking at my sisters just being brats and then like them getting away with it, and I'm just like, oh, you guys are just so lucky. But it's just like, but it's because they've had like my mom's seen like other stuff that says, oh, you shouldn't hit a child, blah blah, you're like traumatizing them or whatever, which kudos to my mom for like being a good parent to my sisters. But it's just like it kind of like just brings back like resentment a little bit growing up, which made me like kind of like, I feel like not was so there for my sisters, because I kind of like resentment in a way, which kind of regretted that. But yeah, stuff like that,
definitely.
But yeah,
it sounds hard.
But for sure, like my mom's parents were way worse, like in terms of being like showing any affection. I mean, I can also imagine it's hard, but I don't know. Don't really know much about my grandparents as well. So
it's a lot of stuff to unpack for sure. Yasmin?
Yeah, I mean, we both of our parents moved to Macau, so we didn't really live with our grandparents so much. Like I think I just visited my grandparents like maybe a couple times, but definitely seen some aspects of that. Like for example, right, like this example of cleaning, like my grandma's way more intense than that. Like you would have like really clean marble, it's like white, and then like I'm like, oh, this is so nice, it's clean, and I see her just picking up like little dust from the floor. I'm like, how do you even see that? But I definitely see what you're saying, and then I feel like it helps because it helps us see like, oh, they're actually trying to improve to like our parents, and they definitely and like I think what Pachi said makes so much sense, because like it's true, the internet is huge. I think that's like another thing. Like as kids, you're not really allowed to tell your parents, or like in an Asian household, be like, you can't tell your parents, but like hitting kid is bad, like you can't do that, right? Because I don't know, at least my household, I can't say like that's bad, but like if someone else tell them, like the internet, shows, right? Then it's like,
We
oh,
never know
people change.
what traumatized meant. You know, the word traumatized like is new to me.
Yeah.
Like growing up, I've never like I didn't know about that until like I realized what it was. And I'm like, whoa, I was traumatized a lot of times. But yeah. Yeah.
Can't find the words to describe that too. For me, it was boundaries. And yeah, did you ever think about, I know traumatized, boundaries. Yasmin, do you have a word that you didn't necessarily grow up hearing and then you heard it and then suddenly had maybe an epiphany that it was a very useful word to describe things?
Yeah, I think boundary, that's a good one. I feel like
Boundaries is
boundary is
such a
still
good one. Oh my
difficult.
God. Growing up,
Yeah,
I
it's
was in
still
the
difficult
same
for me to
bedroom
set.
as my parents, like, because I mean, we couldn't afford like a house where you know, like
Yeah.
I could have my own room or whatever.
Yeah.
But damn, boundaries, please. Oh my God, I can't hide anything from my mom. It's crazy.
Yeah. Or even
Oh.
just like simply mental health, like that's not a concept that
Definitely.
I understood growing up, but it's so different now in the generation. Like they talk about that all the time,
Yeah.
which is good.
Even sex
Like
talk.
within your family.
Sex talk is not a thing
Absolutely.
for Asian
Yeah.
parents. Have you ever had the sex talk with your parents? But it like, when did it happen where it's like, oh, what about kids? Now it's like they're talking about kids. It's like where I missed the fade in, fade out part, you know, like of the whole thing. Like
You know, there's something that's quite interesting about the ways that mental health is talked about in Cantonese, which is that something, if you're bilingual, you're more likely to, a really common pattern of code switching is that you will talk about mental health related topics in English and you'll switch in the middle of a sentence. So you might say something like, 我好 depressed, or 我被 diagnosed 有 anxiety. And I've been sitting on this question as to why this is a pattern that we see for a while. And I don't think there's a conclusion to it yet, but it's more so, I think what's interesting is that English almost, or the language system of English almost gives us a window for us to express certain things that might not be available in Cantonese. And in Cantonese, we have words to say depressed and anxious. So the person could easily have said, 我好焦慮啊今日, or 我被診斷有焦慮症. They're all the words that you have, right? You have all of these words. But when you say it in Cantonese, it sounds like it's a huge, massive problem.
It's a heavier feeling. Yeah.
Or like, have you ever heard someone saying, oh, what, like in your face? Probably not. It sounds bigger than if someone just says, 我好 depressed, or 我今日好 sad. You know,
the
like
only
if you
time
switch it in the middle,
hear, the only time I hear 抑鬱 is like 你做咩咁嘅樣啊？有抑鬱啊你，or 抑鬱症啊？ Like teasing or joking.
It does, and I think a lot of people say that it sounds heavier in Cantonese, and it almost carries a weight that they don't want to bring and bring to the table. And we're all about you mean, in Chinese culture and Asian cultures a lot, you mean saving face.
Good point. Yeah.
So it's a sticky one.
So it's like, if I think for a lot of parents, it's like if your kid kind of comes out and say like, oh, I'm depressed, I'm feeling depressed, like it's like 我冇面啊，見到你咁, or like other worrying about what other families think,
especially
about how I raise
parents
my kids.
that like were from like poverty and like now doing okay. They're like, oh my God, like we have so much, like be thankful, like, and for us to be like sad or depressed, they like would be like, what the hell, like how are you depressed when I've gone through like so much worse? Like that's what they think, like, and because that's probably what I thought as a sister when I was looking at my sisters, you know what I mean? So it's like, but obviously you can't compare that way, like it's but yeah.
Definitely. I think you've touched on such a good point, Haji. It's that comparative suffering. A lot of times I think that within Asian cultures, it's the way of reassurance is saying, you didn't have it as badly as I did. It's like, 我細個咪仲慘, stuff like that is supposed to be reassuring or is supposed to make a person feel luckier, but it's not the same comparison. Every person's struggle and suffering it's a felt experience. It's not a comparative
Or
it's not a
even like
comparative
Philippines,
experience.
like
So
kids in
it's interesting.
Philippines like that. Oh my God. And that's why
Yeah.
like you can't like not finish food because they'll be like, oh, they'll guilt trip you with the kids in Philippines or stuff like that. Woo, guilt trip is very, very
Definitely.
strong.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Did you hear his
Oh,
stories growing up of things like, yeah, Jasmine, did you want to add? Go ahead first.
oh no, I just want to say like guilt, the feeling of guilt is also like
Mm.
really, really strong. And I don't know, like I'm still trying to figure that out, but what is it that my parents did that make me feel so guilty all the time, even now? Like
Oh,
just
even
little
now.
things. And it's so exhausting. And I think that's like another aspect of like growing up and like
It's probably
the
why my
Asian
parents
culture.
Yeah.
also like moved away from their country. Probably their parents were too much too. You know, it's
Mm.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes me think a lot too, the analogy that I've come up with in terms of like intergenerational transference of lots of heavy things and beliefs and attitudes. It's like, a domino set. I actually have not played. I've never actually
You
used
really not
dominoes
as
in my life.
kids?
I just thought it was really
Oh,
cool, or like a Jenga. The blocks with different. I don't even know whether it's called Jenga. I think it is. But
The one where
we're
it's like
kind of you block it up and then you
mhm.
keep building it, right? But with dominoes, right? We're kind of like that intersection where it stops falling. And we've had all of these blocks that have been falling in our past, or each generation has kind of just been falling in response to all of the trauma or the challenges and the beliefs that have hit them really hard. And then we get to be like, nope, I'm going to stop. And it's just kind of we're watching the things that have fallen before us, but then we'll stop that. I really think that that's what we're doing right now. Even just having this conversation, right? Like being really aware of what's been harmful and what's been hurtful, but also understanding that they had a lot of challenges themselves. Yeah.
Definitely.
I
yeah,
like that a
that's
lot.
the balance.
Yeah, that's true.
It is.
Because in the end, like
Yeah,
we're
I hear
never gonna
you.
be here like where we are without them too. Like or how we are
That's
as a
true.
people now, like or how tough we are, like it's because of them
Yeah,
also. So in the end, if like
that's true.
your kid gets too spoiled, it's also not too good.
Yeah.
So it makes me so
Lots of
confused on
things
what to
going on
be
there.
like as a parent, if I ever
Oh my
wanted to
God.
be as a parent.
Oh my
Hmm.
God. It's
I don't know.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
What do you think about when you I guess what are the biggest things that you consider, whether those are fears or um ideas that or principles that you'll hold close to your heart as you consider
Oh
parenting?
man.
I don't
Hmm.
know. I'll take it day
Good
by
question.
day. Yeah. Dude, I
I
was
think one
raised
is like
by a Muslim dad and a Catholic mom. But my mom is so submissive that it's just
Mm.
like my Catholic side is just like mostly just going to church with my mom. Like I never was baptized because my
Mm.
dad would never like really let me like go into deep like in any religion or whatever. But yeah, it's just like I've always just never
Mm.
like stood for something, that saying like, oh, if you don't stand for something, you will
Mm.
fall for anything. That really like fucks with my mom because I don't know. I really don't know. It's like whatever like is treating
Mm.
people nicely, like okay, you know what I mean? Like I just want to treat people how
Yeah.
I want to be treated type of thing.
I think like one thing I think of when it comes to like what kind of values or how to be as parents is like I don't want to be like reactive parents because
Mm.
like a lot of times as kids like I don't know you break a glass and then you get so scared because like oh shoot yeah it's so scary just to do something wrong and I don't
Yeah.
like
I
I mean but
think
this is like
no, yeah, I think it's because our parents were so
Yeah.
like pent up with stress and like, just
yeah
anger and
Mm.
because they don't talk, like they don't now looking back,
Communicate.
I see my mom so mad at me all
Mm.
the time because she's blowing off steam. Because she's like submissive to my dad, submissive to her job. Who else, where else can she blow off steam? It's like when she's scolding me. And so I'm looking back at it like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is. But it's just like, and I accept that because it's just like, honestly,
Mm.
she did a lot as, as a mom, having to clean houses, while taking me to
Yeah.
houses and everywhere.
Yeah.
Ah, sacrifice,
Wow.
sacrifice. I know. And then so like my mom was
That's a
like,
lot.
wait, like I'm like, Mom, it's so expensive to have a kid, blah blah blah. And then my mom's like, well, I was not prepared also, like we're never ready. You're never ready. And I'm like, well, Mom, there's birth control now. So it's like, it's not like, oh, surprise now, Mom. I can actually choose when. Oh, my parents would fight so
Yeah.
much, like, and it's because, like back
Mm.
then when you have a kid, you have to stay together. You have to, like, it's
Oh
just,
yeah.
and for Filipinos especially, or
Especially when you're out of your house, your home, like of course you don't want to separate with that one person that you live with, like because you have to figure out everything.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
like
don't know.
most parents are like, oh,
Mm.
I've only been with your dad, like, oh, I've only, like, that's like a glowing, like a gloat for our parents, like, I've only been with your dad. Okay, good
But
for
like,
your mom.
consistency and yeah.
Plus there's no like, I know for a
Yeah.
fact that my parents don't like they don't know, like, the rules of getting pregnant or whatever, like,
Mm.
getting protected, like even now kids are
Sure.
getting pregnant, like, because of
Yeah.
ignorancy about that. So you can't blame our
Absolutely. I
parents
hear you.
anyway, but it's crazy to like nowadays, to force into a marriage because of kid sounds crazy, like in modern days,
Mm.
but
I hear you.
actually
Yeah.
now it's probably still normal back in Asia, I don't know.
I think it goes
Yeah.
back to like what we were talking about, boundaries too.
Boundaries.
Not really that not really being a thing.
That's true.
But Yasmin, did you have something to add?
I forgot.
That's
Just-
okay. Maybe I'll spur the thought. No, I was going to say something about boundaries. Because I think there is this understanding that boundaries almost means that you don't like someone very much. Like, my mom is someone we've really learned to communicate with each other over time. And I'm grateful that now it's been something we've been working on with my mom and my dad and the rest of my family also. But I was explaining to her what boundaries are. And she speaks English to like a kind of a communicative level. She's a conversational level, but slang is often a little over her head. And so I was like, okay, Mom, so boundaries. And I think in Cantonese, I tried to translate it in a very literal way. Like, I don't know, I think it's guy scene or something like that. It's definitely not that.
Stain your
Who
lane.
knows? What is that? Or Guy Han, or I have no idea what the.
Oh my god, yeah.
That is so funny.
It sounds so like distance, because like
I
between
know.
countries you have like a boundary, and so when I think of like between countries when you say
Exactly.
that in Chinese.
Maybe you can say like,
Exactly.
Oh, you
So it
sian
sounds.
hong gan. Oh, you thought you
Oh,
sian
sian
hong
hong gan.
gan.
Okay,
That's good.
Right? That's a good
幾
pivot.
好啊呢個
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, I feel like there's some stuff in
Definitely.
Cantonese would like the feeling can match, but the words don't match. Like, there's some stuff like in
You're right.
in words, like goosebumps and Taipei, hey Taipei. It's different words, but it's the same. Shite.
How do you say mental? I need mental space from you. Okay, you can say sian hong gan, right? But how do you say like
Yeah.
mental space?
Something.
I think like 心理嘅空間, or something like that. 距離 is another word, like distance.
Yeah.
我需要一啲距離. I don't really know whether
actually, that's good. Yeah. 我需要啲空間，我需要啲距離。
我需要啲空間. I think 空間 sounds very gentle, I think.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think so.
Except if you say
Not heavy.
hong.
Yeah.
just gonna Honggan.
Honggan.
The way you say it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
That's a good one.
So many good. That's great. No, I think because no one, or we didn't grow up saying that at home. And so I think when I was explaining that to my mom, it felt really challenging to explain to her that I was setting a boundary because I cared about the relationship. I was like, it helps for us to have boundaries, not because I don't like you. In fact, it's because I like you a lot. I need the space so that I can find myself again. I can refresh and give myself a bit of a moment, and then I can respond to you in a way that's not going to be hurtful. So it was really nice to explain that to her, even if, when I said the word, it sounded like a desire for distance, 我需要一啲距離 or 我需要一啲空間, and she was like, 係咪唔鍾意我啊? or 係咪 yeah, things like that, 係咪唔鍾意我啊? or like 係咪我煩住你? And I was like, no, 唔係煩住我, but 我需要少少時間去諗下咯，去思考一下咯，然後一陣我哋可以再傾偈。
係我唔係你，係我唔係你。
It's me, it's not you. Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
That's true.
It's been nice to talk about too.
Wow, that must have been like challenging, but kudos to you for making that step.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because just the language itself, like the culture in the language, like it's just a weird combo, mental health and Cantonese, unfortunately.
Oh yeah. I mean, even like speaking to my mom, like that has like English that's kind of broken, so she understands my English to a certain point, and I don't speak her felt like Tagalog, Bisaya in her level, so can never get that deep. But when we do get deep enough, we would both cry, like it's just a lot of times now when we would get emotional, especially when I'm like telling her stuff that's like, oh, I realized that you are just being a good mother. She would get so emotional and cry, and I'm like, oh, Mom, I'm crying too. We're so emotional now. Back then, it's just like everything's just out. Like, and when I cry, my mom is like, you're gonna cry more. Like, she's just like, oh my God, I was so scared to cry, and then like, but now it's just like I cry all the time. But yeah, my mom got so much better. Get those tears out. For sure.
I hear you. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you both as well with regards to just conversations about mental health, because something I noticed when I was having, I work with a lot of people with lived experiences of mental illness and in recovery. And whenever I ask them, why is mental health important to you? Or why do you think that mental health plays a big role in being a happy person or living a fulfilled life? And the first response that so many people say will be, I don't want to be a burden to other people. I don't feel like, if I'm in a poor state of mental health, that I'm 我會累咗人哋，人哋會好辛苦㗎喺我隔離. And it just makes me think about, a lot of times we demonize the fact that, we care too much about other people around us. And I think, of course, there's a lot to say about caring about ourselves for the sake of ourselves. But it also makes me think how our culture really does, like our sense of self is so tied to our collective as well. Maybe that's not the worst thing, maybe that is the way we see like our self is the collective, and that makes us more empathetic people as well. But I wanted to hear your thoughts, like what does mental health mean to you and why is it important for you also?
For me, I feel like there has to be that balance of like when you're in a relationship or when you're growing up, you're also kind of figuring out yourself, and then how do you know who you are without your family, who are you kind of thing, and figuring that out. And I feel like a healthy balance of that is where you can truly like know where your values lie and what fits you, what doesn't fit you, what is something that my parents teach me that is like, okay, this is thanks for teaching me, but I want to think about if it's for me kind of thing. And I don't know, just
for sure,
why is mental health important?
It's a big question. I know.
How do you answer that?
I think like mental health is a lot of time seen as a privilege, you know, like for you to be okay
Oh,
completely,
that's
you
good.
have to be privileged. Like, oh, you must be
Mm,
rich to get like help, like, or even like that's why like complaining, they say they would think you're being a brat because you're just like, oh my God, like you have
yeah.
so much, and like venting is seen as a weakness, but honestly people need to vent, like people
Mm,
need to like let out,
yeah.
and that's what, like I feel like I learned that mental health is very important to learn about, because so that we
Yeah.
can navigate our lives easier, you know, because a lot of
Yeah.
times communicating is hard because we don't know how we think or why we feel,
Mm,
because like a lot of
Yeah,
times we
exactly. You
just,
need that space
yeah.
to figure all that
Mm,
out.
and I always like think it's because growing
definitely.
up I never really had, you know, like even when I'm being disciplined, I don't know why I'm being disciplined. Why am I being hit? Like my mom just
Mm,
say you just don't do that, or like, you know, like, or or just like the way that I was brought up, or something like, oh, using blackmail to punish me or stuff like that, you know, the way that they
yeah.
executed like their parenting skills, like it makes me think, what if like they taught me differently, would I be different or whatever? But it's like it doesn't matter now, like
Mm,
now that it's like I have the resources, or like, you know, online you can find anything, like really, like if you have anxiety you can like search how to ease anxiety or whatever like that, you know.
mm,
I like take advantage of this, and I heal myself
mm.
now, you know. I'm not going to complain about my past, but I would for sure take care of
Sure.
my mental health now, and that's for sure like
Mm,
one thing that being a parent I feel like is very ideal. Like my parents, I grew up seeing them fighting all the time, like it was awful, and honestly, like that's what
mm,
traumatized me as a child. Like everything I think of, like, or like
sure.
have doubts of, is because a lot of things that I grew up seeing. And if you're not happy, like
Mm,
you don't want you don't want your kids to see you unhappy, because it's like, what does
mm.
it say like of having a family, you know? It's like, oh, am I supposed to just be okay with this, you know? Ugh. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, so yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why it's
Lots of
like
stuff.
mental health now, it's like it makes me think like, oh, I gotta be okay before I bring life into this earth, you know.
Yeah,
I'm putting so much
yeah.
like high like
Mm,
And
priority at it now.
yeah, I also like
yeah.
was I don't know where I read this, but um
Mm,
because like I have a sister who is already a mom, and then like she would
mm,
obviously, like, being a parent gives you a very different perspective into your relationship with your parents as well. And then like
interesting.
something I read was like, um if as a parent, if you beat your child up, or like is angry at them, or whatever you do, um based on your emotions, how you're feeling, they don't hate you, but they hate themselves. Like secretly they start hating themselves. Like,
Wow.
why do
Why did
parents
I
why do
do
why does my
what?
mom
Yeah.
do
What
exactly
did
so
I
why does
do
my
to make,
mom
yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Oh,
yes. You blame
wow.
yourself. You don't
Yeah.
blame your parents. Sure, maybe on the surface sometimes you like resent your parents, but deep, deep, deep down, it's like, I hate myself for being this way, that my parents have to act that way. And so for me,
Wow.
like that's like a huge
Mm,
mental health, because like, oh,
Mm-hmm,
if
mm-hmm.
my dad comes home
mm,
stressed, and then like, he does something, and then I'm like, oh, I don't know, hey, why did I do that? Oh, if I just didn't turn on the TV, then I'll be fine. I wouldn't have been beaten up, you know what I mean?
mm.
Like, so it's that
Yeah.
perspective. As a kid, you're so
Wow.
innocent, you don't really like see that,
Yeah,
oh,
and
my
then
parents are
you
going through.
mentioned that to your parents, and then
So true.
they're like, "What? You still remember that? You what? Like I did that to you?" And it's like, yeah, that's one of the most traumatizing
Yeah.
things that I have to grow up with. But thanks. It's
I
like,
hear you
okay,
on that.
oh
Mm.
my
Yeah.
god.
It's like you
Yeah,
take
so
so
it's
much
like,
of the hit. Hear
mm-hmm.
you.
And then
Mm,
you don't want your
Yeah.
future kids to think that, so like you have to be, I don't know, very sane.
Mm.
yeah,
Uh, I don't know how
Yeah.
parents do it, but yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Mm-mm.
Definitely. I just wanted to add one thing here also, which is that So with mental health, it's such a spectrum also. It's also about showing that you can feel sad. Like I think something that my dad is someone who doesn't show very much emotion, especially negative emotion. He's actually a very like covers a lot of things up. And it was when I was younger, I was just like, oh, he's fine all the time. He's fine. Like the word, it's always he's fine all the time. And as I grew up and I studied psychology and I started to learn how to pick up people's cues as to how they are and I guess more hidden signs, more covert signs of when people are anxious or not happy. I was like, oh my gosh, he's always anxious. Or he's anxious a lot of the time and doesn't necessarily show it to me or tell me about it. And so I think that's something else, not saying he didn't do a great job. It's more so when I become a parent, I want to make sure that I'm also expressing that I'm not happy sometimes also, just normalizing that to my kid and say like, hey, if let's say my kid says like, how are you doing? I might say, I'm a bit sad today, or I'm sad today. It hasn't been such a great day, but I'm going to journal about it today and talk to a friend. So also modeling the coping mechanisms and the expression of both positive and negative emotions. Something I would want to model for my kids going forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's really good because it's like, like that crying aspect of like, oh, stop crying, like kind of letting emotions, because emotions are meant to be felt, right? If you don't really
they're meant to be felt.
your emotions, then like they kind of
it will come out in the wrong way.
Yeah.
It will come out in the wrong way in the wrong time. Like if you don't deal with it or like feel with it first. Yeah.
It never goes away unless you like, sit with it or something like that.
Definitely. For sure. I think, over time, maybe even just with our parents. And I've been trying to find ways to just like weave conversation into it. Like, how are you? Even if they find me annoying. Dude, my mom is pretty good at doing the response, but like with my dad's like, I'm like, Dad, how are you? And he's like,
no. I think if I push too much, like I can see that my dad would start getting annoyed. And I was like, hey, I'm fine. We're okay. We're okay. Don't ask questions.
The only time my dad was like tearing up was when like my dad's mom passed away. And then he like immediately like was like, all right, I'm gonna go now. Bye. Like on the video chat. I was like, oh my god. And I cried so much after that because it's like it makes me think of like just so like how much they put in and just not let out just because of pride. Fuck pride, man. Like people thinking like,
or even just like
we're so scared
not having that example for them, right? For them, they see their parents, right? They didn't have that example. I think we grew up with examples of like other families or the internet. We see that, actually you can talk about your emotions. Exactly. But like our parents didn't have that.
As someone that's like with a tan skin, always like just have like the lowest expectation already for myself, like even like academic wise or even behavior wise. Like people always see me, and I always feel that people see me as like the naughty one, or like this it's so naughty, like because even my mom would say that, like whenever I get in trouble, like my mom would be like, or if someone gets in trouble and it's like they were like teasing me, my mom would be like, what did you do? Like first thing all the time. And so it's like, gosh. So it's like if even my parents, my dad's never like parenting. Like my dad's just there for the money or like giving me snacks or whatever. But my mom is the one that's like always just telling me I'm such a disappointment, and so I always like set myself in a low bar. But yeah, like hear a story Asian like beauty standards and stuff, right? Like when you get like a little darker, they're just like, oh, why so black now? Like, I'm like, Mom, like I'm like saying that to your daughter, really? Oh my god, it's crazy.
Yeah, that brings us to our next topic about like body image and this
whole can of worms.
Yes.
Right. Like how like every auntie would just
Absolutely.
like, oh my God. It's just so
What
true
are
with the
some of
aunties
your
telling the body image thing. But you know what
first
though?
thing
Even though
you did?
you get thinner, they will still find something bad to say. Because when I got thinner, like
If
at
you
one
get thinner,
point
they're
I
like, "Oh,
didn't
it's
eat
too
rice.
skinny now."
Yeah. I didn't eat rice for a week, and then I
Yeah.
literally like dropped like so much. And then my mom was so pissed when I wasn't eating rice. Also, she was like, "Why you don't eat rice, huh? Blah, blah, you know that's very unhealthy and blah blah blah." Like I'm like, Mom, I'm just so sick of people saying that I need to lose weight. Okay, like Jesus. And then I lost so much weight, and then and then one day of compliments later, the next day they're like, my aunts are like, oh, no more boobs, no more butt, no more butt, like oh my God, like not too much. And then my mom is like, you look like an addict, like a coke addict or whatever. And then
I
my
know
mom,
what you
I'm
mean.
like, oh, I can't please
Oh my
anyone,
gosh.
I couldn't please anybody when they comment on your weight or whatever, and you're just like obviously can't tell them that they need to check themselves because oh, drama.
Disrespectful.
That would be so disrespect. Oh, like that. I'm like, you asked for. I clapped back. I'm gonna get
Are you
some.
visiting soon?
Yeah, after 4 years of not seeing like my family in Macau, I'm gonna go see
Oof.
them.
It was weird going back like after 4 years of being an adult by myself kind of thing. Like
Mm.
going back to the same thing, like being preached about every little thing. I'm like,
Mm.
I've lived my life for 4 years alone. I'm okay, and I could deal with life on my own.
Yeah.
But then I don't know. It's like the love
Mm-hmm.
language to preach. They gotta preach about every little thing. Like, yeah, drinking
Yeah.
water's still good for you. I'm like, yeah, I know that you told me 10 billion times already. And it's like little things, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then I just kind of like, brush it
You know
off. I'm like,
what though?
yes,
I
yeah.
do see like my
Yeah.
in-laws doing the same thing to my like partner. Like I guess it's a parent thing, they just want to
Yeah,
feel in
maybe.
control. It's
Sure.
like they're slowly just
Yeah.
in control of everything,
Mm.
because they're also getting old. Oh my.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like being far away from family is also just, yeah, a whole can of worms and worries that need to be taken care of. Yeah, and it just kind of circles back to that front part of our conversation about intergenerational conversations too. Like, starting to talk about these vulnerable things as we're getting older as well, as our parents are getting older, and it's like that's when the vulnerable conversations come out and the discomfort also comes out. And people start to be like, oh, should I talk about getting old and feeling nervous about aging and growing up? For us, young adulthood. For parents, it's like retirement. All the sicknesses and the issues of old age, all that stuff. They're all touchy topics, things that people don't really want to talk about. Have you ever heard, when you talk about death at a dinner table, for example, people are like
Choi
"bagat
lah.
or like choi.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like, yeah, right.
Always.
Okay, I'm not alone.
Always.
Okay.
I've never really
Yeah.
had a
And it's like,
conversation. I feel like I've
that's
always
life.
tried to ask some,
Mm.
like whenever I do ask a question with my parents, I feel like I always got turned down. Like just somehow like it ends up with hi, yeah, and like don't ask like that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't
Yeah,
know anything about my
for
family
sure.
because of that. And it's like a lot of times, like even my partner would ask something about my parents that I should know or something, and then I don't
Mm.
know, and it's like, how would you not know? And I'm like, I don't actually talk to my parents that much, like in terms of
Yeah.
family stuff, which is weird to tell people that,
The big stuff, yeah.
but it's really like that when you're like in a third culture family, like because it's just like because you have
Yeah.
like a life in that country, and then you have like a home is so different, it's just another thing. And I mean, depends if your parents
Definitely.
let you in, their culture,
Mhm.
like if they took the time to, or if they didn't have
For
time
sure.
to. So my parents didn't really have the
Yeah.
time to, and I now have the time, but am I lazy? I may be a little lazy, maybe one day. Yeah,
It's hard to broach the conversation. I don't think it's
that
easy to.
too.
Like, and
Yeah.
even just going back to like why our older relatives might say things like, ah, and they fade or comment on our bodies. It's like, I think I like to see it as, those, when you're on a roller coaster and there are these grooves that the roller coaster goes on, or train tracks, essentially. Yeah. And I think about how conversations often are like that. It's probably the case that for our older relatives, this is just like the conversational grooves that they've always traveled on. The small talk. What do you say when you meet someone at a dinner gathering, right? It's like probably the first familiar thing that comes out of your mouth is a comment about body. I don't think people think twice about it. Or it's talking about food, like 食多啲啦, or 點解食呢樣嘢啊? It's a way of starting a conversation.
Or the first thing
I think all of us, right. And that's familiar. And even for our whenever, even if I'm in a situation where I don't know how to start a conversation, I might comment on, let's say for us, it might be the weather, something less aggressive, but nonetheless, it's something that we have almost programmed into our heads as something that is likely to start conversation. And for them, maybe in their generation, it was something that was able to spark a conversation. But for us, it just, because of the way our world has changed, our societal norms have changed, beauty standards are so pervasive everywhere on social media, it just hits different. But it's, it's interesting in that way to look at it through that lens, I think.
That's true. Yeah. No, for sure. I think it's like almost like muscle memory for some people, like they're excited to see you, like, like relatives are excited to see you, and the first thing they say, oh, you're so fat, but they don't mean like, oh yeah, you're fat, you're disgusting, but they meant like,
it's almost like the meaner the comments, they like think like the closer you are, equals to the closer you are,
That's a good point.
Very backwards, like logic, but thanks. Like, but then they ask for stuff. Like, oh my God, like, like they ask for presents when I send back gifts to my mom, and it's like, oh my God, and it becomes so nice afterwards, when they get their present, like, thank you, like that, and then no comments, like, oh. They can keep their comments. Oh,
they can keep their comments.
It's funny, so but you're right. It's really a reflex for them, and but it's like it's on us to change the general. Like, we are adults now. We can stand up for ourselves. We're not those kids that's like, oh, afraid of a mom card anymore. Absolutely. I can actually tell my mom like logic, and she would be like, that's true. Like, we can have conversations now, and it's like, I'm so thankful for that, obviously. But it's like,
so beautiful.
It's also me, learning how to communicate too. Because before, I would always just be mad too, like, or annoyed by my mom. Like, every time I see my mom trying to talk to me, I see it as a nagging. Because growing up, like, I never got to talk to her because she's always mad at me. Then now, like, when she does try to talk to me, I'm just like, she's just nagging at me, and it's just, right? Oh, there's so many times I feel so guilty afterwards, like, because I'm like, I realized how rude I was. I was like, oh my God, I'm sorry, Mom.
No, I would, because like growing up as like teenager to young adult age, I'm like, I'm so annoyed every time my mom calls my name or says anything, and then I'm like, what? And then she's just like, oh, here's some oranges. And I'm like, oh shit. Nah, I'm the bad guy. Because like, why am I so annoyed? But it's true. It's like, because we saw it as like nagging, or I don't know, telling us to do this, do that. And so like now whenever they it kind of makes you like reflect on yourself. I don't know.
I think we have reprogramming to do too. There's like a collective reprogramming. I hear that.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah.
This was such a good conversation. And so I also just, I guess it gave me a chance to reflect also on, just right at the end of the conversation, thinking about parents nagging, or how we're so programmed to believe that our parents are coming at us with a certain intention. And, obviously there were things that in the past that would have created those beliefs for us. And then it's like now the relationship is changing also. And they're probably reflecting on, as they grow, they're also reflecting on things that they might have wanted to change as well. So I think that's a really beautiful thing. Yeah.
It's true.
I'd love to hear from the Outcasts community about if you know, when you're listening to this, and if you have things that you've reflected on, things that you might be watching your parents also start to reflect on, and then things that you yourself are reflecting on as to things you might have assumed that your parents are doing because of the things that they've done to you in the past. And then, looking at your parents as well, and then acknowledging things that they're changing. I'm so curious to hear from all of you also.
Yes, let us know comments. And
Well.
I also want to add, most of us are lucky to have parents who at this age like are still open to kind of learning and growing the ways of communicating, the ways of being a parent, because maybe some people are not lucky enough to have parents that where they didn't have to set the boundary of like completely cutting off the relationship. You know, because some people might have to do that for their own mental health sanity. So like some of us are lucky enough to still have these kind of conversations with our parents. But
absolutely.
Yeah,
hugs to those of you. And I hope you're finding chosen family also, if that's the case.
Chosen family. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Nice.
I love this. Before we end, can I tell you this really random fact that I learned about?
I think you told us.
Right? Oh,
say it.
I did too.
Say it here.
Okay, so I don't know if people can see the screen. If you're listening on the podcast, if you are imagining a Korean heart, you know, the ones with the two fingers overlapped, that's not the full part of the heart. It's your whole hand is the heart, and the top are the aorta, the two overlapping, like the veins. I'm not a med student. If you're a med student and you're wondering that if I misnamed the two overlapping veins, or you know, those bloop 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 things. So your fingers are those overlapping veins, or I think they're called aorta, and then the whole hand is the body of the heart.
Because isn't
so I hope you have fun with that.
Right? Isn't the size of your fist like the size of your heart?
Right. I think.
Or was it the kidney or the lung? I don't remember.
Oh,
not the lung for sure.
Heart.
I'm not sure which organ it was, but your fist is the size of one of the organs.
Your heart.
Med students out there, help us out. If you're a med student, tell us
your brain.
What the size of our fist. Whether.
Oh, that's kind of small.
Yeah.
I really hope my brain's not the size of my fist. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Maybe two fists.
I like it.
2 fists, hopefully.
Oh yeah, true.
Right? Actually, it's like 2 lobes.
I think so. Do you think so? Do you think it's probably maybe the 2 lobes, right? Yeah.
4 maybe.
I'll take 2 fists. I think I'm happy with that.
Oh my god.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. This been so
fun.
nice.
This was wonderful.
Yes, very refreshing.
Thanks for helping us think too. I feel like you had good questions too.
Oh yeah, I feel like I'm in therapy session, you know. Every time I talk about my past or my childhood, I get like, you know, a little teary, a little emotional. But
yeah. It's a lot of emotion.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I don't
lots of love.
No. This is amazing. This is good. All right. Hope this healed someone. Like I feel like healing. You know?
We can have more conversations. Just bring me back.
Yes.
Let us know if you guys want to bring. Oh yeah, shout out whatever you want to shout out too.
Your channels. Let us know your channels that people could check out.
Yeah, I'll put this in the end.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at _the mighty munchkin _.
Oh.
Funny story with that is one time someone only knew me by my handle, and I'm pretty small as a person, and they said to me, "Oh, are you the mighty munchkin?" And there was a person next to them, and they were like, "That's so rude." And I was like, no, that's my handle. It's okay.
That's adorable.
So cute. Oh my god, that's such a cute name.
What about the charity you created?
And the charity, if you want to follow us at Body Banter, we're at Body Banter, and our website is www.bodybanter.com. So those are the ways that you can find me on my IG, or find us at Body Banter and find out about our work there. Thanks, fam.
Check them out, guys. Important work you're doing.
Thank you.
Like and subscribe,
Thank you so
people.
much, Yasmin and Paji.
Oh yeah.
No.
No worries. This is great. Thank you so much.